Mr. Danielson will be filming us today. So thank you for being here, Bruce.
Well, good morning. I am Jill Franken. I'm a Public Health Director with the City of Sioux Falls. Thank you for joining me this morning. I'm pleased and honored to be sharing with you, Sioux Falls, the annual ambulance contract performance report, which shows that Paramedics Plus has once again exceeded their requirements for the contract year ending April of 2017. You know, Paramedics Plus operates within the city's EMS system through an exclusive franchise agreement with the City of Sioux Falls. Our department, which administers the ambulance contract on behalf of the city, is required to submit an annual ambulance contract performance report. That's a lot to say. The ambulance service contract requires the health department to review the following performance indicators. So one is workforce stability. And we found that Paramedics Plus has taken several key steps to address employee retention. I'll share a few specifics on this later. Pricing compliance is another element. Claims reviews and an independent audit have been conducted as required by the contract. Reporting compliance. All reports that they are required to provide to REMSA, to the health department, to the city have been conducted as required by the contract. In addition to these operational indicators, the report also includes data on response time and clinical measures, which the health department also is required to monitor. The first being response time performance. Response time requirements for each priority have been met every month, as shown on this chart before you. Of note, our department compliance monitoring and reporting was internally audited recently with a clean audit reported to the City Council Audit Committee on June 29th. Second, clinical performance. Clinical measures, cardiac arrest outcomes, medical audits, and case reviews are part of the clinical performance standards that are reviewed in this report. Third, system improvements. Paramedics Plus has been engaged in facilitating innovative programs to improve system performance in Sioux Falls. There are also a few notables that I would like to highlight. CAS accreditation achieved. Now, CAS accreditation stands for the Commission on Accreditation of Ambulance Services. Anyone in the healthcare field who has achieved accreditation status knows how difficult it is to become accredited. They not only became accredited within the first year, it was required they do it within the first 2 years. They did it within the first year. They set to work immediately after the award in becoming prepared for that accreditation. And boy, did they ever achieve that in a big way. They had a perfect score, which is extremely rare and provides this community with assurance and evidence of the quality of services that they provide by having that accreditation by an external third party. Another notable, it is my understanding that Paramedics Plus revenues, which exceed their expenses, are used to benefit the people in Sioux Falls, to increase employee wages, to increase personnel hiring as the city grows, and to assure they have the needed equipment and technology to provide safe and effective care. Now, revenues are generated by Paramedics Plus through fees or rates that are initially set in the contract. It is also in the contract that these fees will increase annually by greater than 3% or by the Consumer Price Index for each year. Use of those increased fees or revenues has enabled Paramedics Plus to take the necessary steps to maintain competition, to be competitive in hiring, and to decrease staff turnover. So a few notables in this area. They gave a 3% staff wage increase each of the first 2 years of operations. In May of 2016, all non-salary staff were given an additional 6% increase. And in June of 2017, an additional 4% wage increase. This is a total of 16% wage increase for the men and women that serve us in our community so they can be competitive in hire good employees and assure a solid workforce in this community. Lastly, these men and women who serve as paramedics and EMTs in our community are achieving greater on-time performance even than when they worked for the prior provider. So prior to Paramedics Plus coming on board, we had Rural Metro, who is providing fine ambulance service in our community. These men and women have really elevated their game. They're providing an even higher level of quality and responsiveness in our community. Extremely, extremely important. So we will be sharing this report with the City Council tomorrow afternoon at the 4 p.m. informational. You can find that report at www.siouxfalls.org/REMSA. I want to thank a couple people, Julie Charbonneau for preparing this report, as well as the REMSA Board, the REMSA Medical Board for their tireless volunteer efforts. I also want to thank Dr. Luther as well as Sandy Prince. I want to thank you for attending the press conference today. And lastly, but very importantly, this final thought. I ask that you consider taking the time to thank the Paramedics Plus staff when you see them out and about. These are men and women who are members of our community who are working hard to provide high quality emergency medical care. Please also thank our 911 dispatch staff, our police, and our Sioux Falls Fire Rescue. They all make up your emergency medical services system and are here to serve you and to save lives. Thank you. And with that, I would offer any questions, and we also have plenty of folks here who are subject matter experts in both the area of the reporting as well as some of the elements of the report, and then also the services that are provided. So,
when does the council decide on the rate increase?
The rate increase, first reading of that rate increase will be tomorrow night at 7 p.m. and then the following Tuesday will be the second reading.
Somebody stole most of my clothes.
Now that we're not doing 980s and we're now admitting, you know, when you listen to the scanner, that we're not getting to the, we're not calling for phantom ambulances, and we're now not calling for ambulances until long after the fire rescue has showed up at the site. How are we going to be doing the reporting to meet these deadlines? Is the fact that we're now pushing out the actual calling of the ambulances going to be taken into the next reporting compliance? All you have to do is listen to the scanner and follow pulse point to see what game is being played now. So I'm just asking, you know, how is that going to be adjusted into all of these compliance rates?
The time of dispatch, the time that call starts is when they end their call taking and they call for dispatch. So 911, Metro 911, are the folks that start that timestamp and start that clock. There isn't anything in the process of all the elements that come towards us providing the EMS services that changes that. And so these times that you see before you are when Metro 911 ends taking their call, and they have ended that call and they are dispatching for an ambulance service. So any of the other things that you might be talking about have no validity in what these compliance times are.
That's showing contract compliance. We're actually asking about patient care. And the fact that the ambulances aren't being dispatched at the time that the call comes in. You know, we're hearing on when we listen to the scanner about private messages to be looked at on the computer, you know, to get in position. You know, I've watched the ambulances work. I've watched where it says an ambulance was called to a location and I've never seen an ambulance pull up to it. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, what all of this is about. I'm on the streets of Sioux Falls every day for hours, so, you know, I just kind of see these things. So I'm just asking.
Mm-hmm. this organization made up of many partners, this EMS system made up of many, many individuals, is a system that has become more transparent than ever. And we are putting out more information to the public, to anyone who asks for this, any information that they're asking for. We're providing more and more information than ever before. With that comes a public responsibility. What comes from that is a good faith effort to trust and regard the information that we are providing. We have had a number of audits done. The first audit that we had completed was, is this going to be the right system for this new contract? That was done well in advance of the RFP being completed. The next audit we had was, well, we had the internal auditor help us set up the right level of reporting and compliance. Julie Charbonneau worked very closely with Rich Oxel to make sure that we're including all the elements within the contract. Then, almost a year ago, I said, we have now got to make sure that we have an audit of how well we are actually monitoring that. How well are we doing our job as a health department of assuring that contract compliance? We have asked for open transparency. We have asked for information to be reviewed and shared. And I am very confident with the information that I'm providing to you and the evidence that we have in this report, more of which you can find if you go on our link, and which will be shared with the council tomorrow as evidence of that, both in terms of responsiveness and quality performance, and that's how I will answer your question.
Paramedics
Yes.
Plus service meeting the needs of the community.
Is Paramedics Plus service meeting the needs of the community? Yes, I believe that they are meeting the needs of this community, and we continue to provide assurance that they are doing that, and they are meeting every contract requirement that is theirs in that agreement. This is a much more complex agreement than we had with our prior ambulance provider. There is much more that is required of them than ever before. Especially in the reporting elements, and making sure that they're providing that information of their both quality and performance, time performance. So I believe they are.
So you keep saying contract requirement and showing the contracted compliance time. I'm wondering how this compares to what the general public would think of. If my child's having a seizure and I call 911, how long from when I call 911 to when an ambulance shows up at my house to pick up my child?
Sure. You know, there's a number of really good documents, references, studies, etc., that have been done that we used when setting up this particular contract. And one of them in particular talks about how you need to set up, what should you expect of your provider? What should be that number that you would expect them to stay above? And I'll just read something to you. It's in this particular document that we used. It said, while the best standard would require a response time within the established response time 100% of the time, this is not reasonable or economically affordable. Consequently, a 90% response requirement typically is used. And as you can see, while that is sort of that national documented standard that is still being used in many, many communities, they are well exceeding that requirement.
But talk about that in layman's terms. So does this mean that, what is that response time as far, and are you talking about from the time someone calls 911 to when the ambulance shows up at their house? Is that what this is referring to? Yes, absolutely. So the time that dispatch at 911 says we have a priority 1 life-threatening emergency to when they actually arrive at the bedside of the patient. So for this P1, you can see this blue bar shows the percent. So nearly, we're between 95 and 100% much of the time.
So they're well meeting that standard. Now that's not near as many calls as our non-life-threatening emergencies and our non-emergency transports. They make up 13,000 of our 15,000 calls for service. And those response times are then the orange and the gray, where you can see they are well exceeding as well. And actually in many cases sitting around 98% for those. So 98 out of 100 times, they're meeting that response time, which is 8 minutes and 59 seconds or less for a priority 1, 12 minutes and 59 seconds, 11 minutes and 59 seconds for a priority 2, and 15 minutes and 59 seconds for a priority 3. And so priority 1 again is life-threatening emergencies, priority 2 is non-life-threatening emergencies, priority 3 is a non-emergency transport. Does that help?
It does help. It does help. And I'm just wondering though if this does account fully for when they call to when they show up, not when they're dispatched, not when they're...
It starts, can someone come up and give a really good explanation of that so that I don't misspeak in any way?
The response time clock starts when Metro 911 has finished the questioning they need to do, assigned the proper priority, and then sent out the page or the radio dispatch. So the minute that happens, and if multiple agencies are being dispatched, it's the same timestamp for all of them. So it's not when the ambulance wheels start to turn. That's an internal measure that they use, but it is when Metro says, there, call dispatched. So that starts the clock. The clock stops when the unit arrives on scene.
Is the council considering the CPI increase or the 3%? Do you know that yet? Or?
They'll be considering the 3%.
In looking at this graph, priority 1 response time seems to be the most inconsistent. Can you go ahead and give us a little bit more information on that?
Well, part of that would be because the number of calls are far fewer. And so you're going to have more of an inconsistency when you have fewer calls. And the number of calls off the top of my head for non-life threatening, I think is right around 550 for priority 1. Boy, now see, I'm going to say that and it's not going to be...
It is in the 500s, but I'd have to double.
Out of 15,000 calls. It's far fewer, so you can see that it's going to create more variability with any average or fractile response time average that you're looking for.
Can you just sort of weigh in on what Brian Neal said last month at the REMSA meeting? You know, obviously you have people who are concerned about the service, residents. Just talk about that a little bit.
I am going to say anyone who has any concerns to call me personally. And my phone number is 367-8760. That would be the health department number. I would want to talk to anyone. I would also welcome them to call the agency Paramedics Plus. Call Mike Bureau at any time. I would welcome them to call our REMSA board chair, and we could use that same number to get in touch with Gary Meyer, who is our REMSA board chair. I would say that is really important. I will tell you, I don't get those phone calls. Even Mr. Neal, I asked him to please call me anytime that he would like to talk. He had not reached out to our department prior to the REMSA board meeting. And so I would just encourage anybody who has been a patient or is a loved one that has any questions or concerns. That's what we need to also do to be able to, we need to talk to people about their services so that we can continue to do all our parts in the system to make sure that we're making it as efficient, effective as possible for our community. All right. Thank you very much for coming. If there's any other questions you have for anyone, I'm sure that you could grab somebody for any particulars that I haven't addressed. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
On time, 536 times on 544.
Okay.
And this, let's see, April 2007.
Y'all come back now. Here.
Security, escort this gentleman out, please.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.